Sana had always believed in love. She had given her heart, soul, and every ounce of trust to Ayan. He was charming, affectionate, and knew exactly how to make her feel special. For 2 years, their love story had been nothing short of a fairy tale. Late-night calls, stolen kisses, and promises of forever. Sana had thought she was living the dream, but dreams, she was about to learn, could shatter in an instant. It started with a small change. Ayan became distant. His once consistent good morning texts turned sporadic. He canceled plans last minute, claiming work pressure or family issues. At first, Sana ignored the nagging feeling in her gut. She told herself she was overthinking. But doubts, once planted, grow like weeds. One evening, while scrolling through social media, she noticed a familiar name, Mehak. Ayan had mentioned her once, calling her just a friend. But something about their interactions felt off. The way he commented on her pictures, the late-night likes, it all seemed too intimate. Sana's heart pounded as she clicked on Mehak's profile. She scrolled through her posts, her fingers trembling. Then she saw it. A picture from 2 nights ago, Ayan and Mehak sitting across from each other at a candlelit dinner, smiling. The caption read, "A perfect night with someone special." Her breath hitched. Her mind refused to believe it. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe they were just friends. But deep down, she knew. The picture, the secrecy, his distant behavior, it all made sense now. Determined to find the truth, she decided to confront him. That night, she called Ayan, keeping her voice calm. "Hey, can we meet tomorrow?" "I miss you." He hesitated before agreeing. Another red flag. The next day, she arrived early at the cafe where they always met. Her heart was a storm of emotions: hurt, anger, disbelief. When Ayan finally walked in, she searched his face for guilt, for any sign that he regretted what he had done. But he smiled at her like nothing had happened. Sana took a deep breath and placed her phone on the table. She opened the picture and turned the screen toward him. Care to explain this? Ayan's face paled. For a moment he was silent. Then he forced a chuckle. "Sana, it's not what it looks like. Don't," she cut him off, her voice shaking. "Don't lie to me." He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Look, I didn't mean to hurt you. It just happened." Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Love doesn't just happen. Cheating doesn't just happen, Ayan. You made a choice. Silence hung between them like a blade. For the first time in 2 years, she saw him for who he really was, a liar, a coward. Without another word, she stood up, picked up her bag, and walked away, leaving him behind with nothing but his own guilt. Sana sat in the darkness of her room, staring at the picture on her phone, Ayan and Mehak, laughing together, oblivious to the damage they had done. Her hands trembled, but not with sadness. The tears had already dried. Now, only one emotion consumed her: revenge. She had given Ayan her heart, and he had crushed it without a second thought. He had played with her love, lied to her face, and expected to get away with it. But he was wrong. He would pay for every single lie, every broken promise, and every moment of pain he had caused her. Sana was not the kind of girl who would cry and move on. She was the kind of girl who remembered, who made sure justice was served in the most painful way possible. She spent the next few days observing Ayan, pretending to be the heartbroken ex-girlfriend who just needed closure. He believed her act, because that's what cheaters do. "They believe they're invincible one night," she called him, her voice soft and trembling. "Ayan, I need to talk. Please, just one last time." He hesitated, but then agreed. "Okay, meet me at my place. We can talk." Perfect. Sana arrived at his apartment, carrying a small bag. Inside it were the tools of her revenge, ones that would make him regret ever betraying her. Ayan opened the door with a guilty smile. "Sana, She didn't let him finish. Instead, she stepped inside, her eyes cold, her movements calculated. "I just want to understand why, Ayan," she whispered. "Why did you do it?" he sighed. "I didn't mean to hurt you. It was a mistake." Sana smiled, but there was no warmth in it, A mistake? She repeated, stepping closer. No, Ayan, the real mistake was thinking you could betray me and walk away unscathed. Before he could react, she reached into her bag. The last thing Ayan saw was the glint of cold steel and the fire in her eyes. That night, the city was silent. But inside Ayan's apartment, his screams echoed. Long, painful, and filled with regret. Sana smiled as she texted Ayan, her fingers steady, her heart calm. I miss you. Can we meet? I don't want to end things like this. Let's talk. She knew exactly what he would say. Ayan was predictable. Like all cheaters, he wanted to have it all. He would believe she still loved him, that she was weak, desperate for him. He had no idea who he was dealing with. His reply came quickly. Of course, Sana. I was hoping we could fix things. Let's meet tonight. Hook, line, and sinker. Sana chose the perfect spot, a deserted farmhouse outside the city, a place where no one would hear him scream. She told Ayan she wanted privacy, a quiet place to talk, to start over. He agreed without hesitation, thinking she was just another naive girl who couldn't let go. That night, she dressed carefully. Simple jeans, a black hoodie, gloves. She needed to be prepared. In her bag, she carried the tools of her revenge: rope, a sharp knife, and a vial of something special she had prepared. Ayan arrived at the farmhouse, looking relieved. Sana, I'm so glad you called. She cut him off with a smile. Let's go inside first. As he stepped in, she locked the door behind him. The air was thick with tension, but Ayan was too blind to notice. He turned to face her, guilt flickering in his eyes. Listen, I know I hurt you, but I swear, I still— Shh, she whispered, placing a finger on his lips. I don't want to talk about the past. Let's drink to new beginnings. She handed him a glass of wine, already laced with a sedative. He hesitated for only a second before taking a sip. Within minutes, his body swayed, his vision blurred. Sana, what's happening? She watched as he collapsed to the floor, struggling to move. Kneeling beside him, she whispered in his ear, You thought you could betray me and walk away. Ayan's eyes widened in fear as he realized the truth. This wasn't a reconciliation. It was a trap, and he wasn't getting out alive. Ayan's head felt heavy, his limbs numb. His vision blurred as he struggled to sit up, but his body refused to obey. Panic surged through him as he realized he couldn't move. His wrists and ankles were tied to the chair, the rough rope digging into his skin. Sana? His voice was weak, slurred. What? What is this? She stood in front of him, arms crossed, her face unreadable. The warmth, the desperation he had expected, none of it was there. Instead, she looked calm. Too calm. Shh, she whispered, crouching down to his level. You always talk too much, Ayan. Always lying, always making excuses. But tonight, you don't have to say anything. Tonight, you just listen. His breathing turned ragged as fear took over. Sana, please. This isn't funny. He tugged at the restraints, but they held tight. She chuckled, tilting her head. Funny? You think this is a joke? Her smile faded. Did you think I wouldn't find out? That I'd cry for a few days, and then just move on? He swallowed hard. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Her eyes darkened. Sorry? She stepped behind him, her fingers brushing the back of his neck. That's all you have to say. His heart pounded. Please, just let me go. We can talk about this. She sighed. Oh, Ayan, there's nothing to talk about. Without warning, she yanked his head back, pressing the cold edge of a knife against his throat. He froze, his body trembling. Do you know what betrayal feels like? She whispered in his ear. It's like a knife slowly twisting inside you. But don't worry, I'll make sure you feel it too. Ayan thrashed against the chair, pure terror in his eyes. But it was too late. He had already fallen into her trap, and there was no way out. Ayan's breathing was ragged, his wrists raw from struggling against the ropes. His entire body trembled, but not from the cold. It was fear. Pure, paralyzing fear. Sana circled him slowly, her eyes filled with something dark and unreadable. She wasn't the girl who used to love him. That girl was gone. What remained was someone else entirely, someone cold, merciless. Sana, please. His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. She crouched beside him, tilting her head. Please, what? Her fingers trailed over the blade in her hand, light as a feather. Please let you go. Please forgive you. Please believe your lies again. She chuckled, shaking her head. No, Ayan. That part of me is dead, just like you will be soon. Ayan's eyes widened, his body jerking violently. No, 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 Sana, please. I made a mistake, I swear. It didn't mean anything. You have to believe me. Her grip tightened on the knife. You didn't mean to hurt me? She dragged the tip of the blade down his arm, just enough to break the skin. He hissed in pain, his muscles tensing. That's funny, she mused, watching a thin line of blood bead along the cut. Because I do mean to hurt you. Ayan gasped as she pressed the knife deeper, his body shuddering. The pain wasn't unbearable yet. She didn't want it to be, not immediately. She took her time, a small cut here, a deeper one there. She was careful, methodical. Every slice was deliberate, each one drawing a little more blood, a little more agony. His screams filled the abandoned farmhouse, but there was no one around to hear him, no one to save him. You played with my heart, she whispered, watching as he whimpered, his head slumping forward. So now I'll play with you. She picked up the salt she had brought and sprinkled it over his wounds. His body jerked violently as the burning sensation spread through his skin, his cries raw with suffering. Please, he sobbed. Please stop. Sana leaned in close, her lips brushing against his ear. Did you stop when I begged for the truth? She yanked his head back, forcing him to look into her eyes. No, Ayan, I want you to feel this, to regret every lie, every betrayal, and when you finally take your last breath, I want you to know it was me who ended you. Ayan's sobs turned into choked gasps as the pain became too much. His body sagged against the ropes, weak, broken. Sana stepped back, admiring her work. The man who had betrayed her, the man who had once promised her the world, was now nothing more than a trembling, bleeding mess. She lifted the knife one last time. Goodbye, Ayan, and with a final, decisive stroke, she ended his suffering.